Hi, so today we're going to make a recipe of spicy green beans. You can see this sometimes called Szechuan string beans at some of the Asian restaurants if you go to it. Sometimes if you get it at a restaurant though, it can be deep fried green beans, and sometimes it's served with a lot of saturated fats. They can make it with pork. So this is kind of a healthier take on these spicy green beans. And the first thing you have to do is prep all your vegetables. Because we don't want to use pork, we want to have something with a little of that kind of a flavor to mix into the green beans. We're going to do some diced up mushrooms that can give it a little bit more depth to the flavor. And we're going to get all the ends cut off the green beans and get those boiled while we mix up the sauce. And I've already cut the ends off. I'm just going to put these in to boil them. The reason why we're boiling the green beans before we saute them is it'll help things move through a little quicker. I use like parboiling like this sometimes when I'm grilling vegetables too. Like if you want to grill green beans, or if you want to grill broccoli or cauliflower, if you boil it first just a little bit, a few minutes, just enough to start to soften it, then you can sear it on the higher heat. What can happen if you don't is if you just put these at high heat, the outside will be nice and brown, but the inside might still be too hard. And so this is, again, instead of deep frying them, which it obviously isn't as healthy for you. So I'm just going to put these in. There's a little bit of salt in the water, so just boiling salted water. Run away. All right. I'm going to set my timer for a few minutes, and then we can test it in a few minutes. In the meantime, I'm going to make the sauce. I've already got a half a cup of a vegetable stock. You can use mushroom stock or veggie stock or chicken stock, and this is going to help deglaze the pan. When we're cooking with all of these ingredients like the garlic and the ginger and browning the mushrooms, you can sometimes get a lot of build up at the bottom of the pan, and that can be really good flavors. You want to kind of loosen those things up and get them mixed in, and using a liquid can really help with that. So that's all set. The other components of this sauce are a low sodium soy sauce. All right, we're going to put a few tablespoons of that in, and this makes a lot of green beans. So this is, you know, there's a lot of sodium in soy sauce, but this is a big batch. Another additive that we sometimes add at the end of this recipe is a little splash of fish sauce. That's not something that everybody has in their kitchen, but you can also use a little Worcestershire sauce, or you can just omit it. This is some rice vinegar. It's going to be a few, oh, it's not opened yet. It's going to be a few tablespoons of rice vinegar, and I'm going to put a tiny little bit of sugar in there, not a lot, just to kind of sweeten it up a little bit. Just about it. Just going to even just like a teaspoon, half a teaspoon to a teaspoon of the brown sugar. Mix that right in. And this will be all set to go. You want this set to go for when your veggies are ready for it. Okay, and what's going to happen in this pan while these green beans are cooking is we could also start the mushrooms. But because I've been talking so much and we only have a minute left, I'm just going to wait, get these boiled. And then as soon as they're boiled, you want to stop cooking them. So we're going to just put them in a strainer in the sink and then just run them under cool water, and then they'll be a little bit soft and ready to go. So we'll have you come right back when we're ready to start with the mushrooms. Okay, so now we're ready to cook up the mushrooms. Just so 1 or 2 tablespoons of oil, depending on how much you have. We've got a pretty big batch today. And get that all heated up. You want it good and hot before you put the mushrooms in. We're going to cook our mushrooms down. I bought these mushrooms already sliced. You can look at the unit pricing in the store, and it's interesting. Oftentimes with mushrooms, you're not actually going to spend that much more money if they're sliced or not. And so it can save you that step. And if it's no more money, sometimes I buy them this way just to cut down the work. All right, get these guys in there. I can can see the oil is starting to glisten a little bit, means it's starting to heat up. Not too hot yet, but it's starting to glisten. You want to get it good and glistening. And I'm going to go ahead with my mushrooms and get them started. All right, and when mushrooms cook, your goal would really be to get some of that liquid out of them. So initially, when you cook mushrooms, you'll see you have a lot more in your pan. When you're done cooking them, they seem like it's much smaller in volume, and that's because you're getting the, all that liquid out of the mushrooms. That helps. Sometimes people don't like the texture of a mushroom because it can be a little bit, when you bite into it, a little bit chewy, the raw mushrooms. Some people like it, and it's certainly not bad for you, but the cooked mushrooms can be a lot more crunchy, but you just have to get all that liquid out. I'm also going to add in 4 diced scallions. Get those. I have more than that in here because I'm going to use some in another recipe. 4. And I save, you can put them all in. I actually saved the tops of the scallions to add in a little bit later. These tops, if you look when you cut them, the top part really is much thinner and it doesn't need to cook as long, and sometimes you can just use it as a condiment on the top. So I don't always add those in because I like to have something a little crunchy in there. All right, let me get my spoon. Starting to cook. And I'm going to put a little garlic in, my ginger in now too, just to get the other aromatics in here as these mushrooms are cooking down. So this recipe I'd probably add in about a tablespoon of ginger and enough for 2 cloves of garlic. So, in this you don't want to bite into a big chunk of garlic. I used my garlic, I grated my garlic on a microplane. You could also just dice it really, really, really fine. Nobody wants to chew into a big piece of garlic. All right, get this all mixed up, and it's going to cook down. This is probably going to take at least 3 or 4 minutes, so we'll take a break here and you can rejoin us when the mushrooms are looking a little more cooked. All right, so now you can see there's some dried bits at the bottom of the pan. We're going to be deglazing this, but before I do that, I want to add in our green beans. So when we add the liquids, it's going to pull all this yummy stuff right up. You just want to make sure you don't let it burn. You do also want to get these green beans in when the pan is pretty hot, because the whole purpose is to get them good and wrinkly. In the meantime, you see, it's starting to burn a little bit. You can add a little bit of liquid, but you're not going to get the same caramelization if there's liquid in the bottom of a pan as you would if there's just high heat and a little bit of oil at the bottom of the pan. I'm just going to mix these green beans in here. Get them good and covered in the ginger and garlic. It does look a little dry. Sometimes the mushrooms do soak up a lot of the oil. I'm going to add a tiny bit more oil. Now, you got to remember that oil is going to have a lot of calories. This is a healthy oil. It's a vegetable oil that is low in saturated fat. You want to use that as much as you can. I still have my heat on pretty high. And I'm being careful to make sure nothing's burnt down there because nobody likes burnt garlic. Get these green beans down there a little bit scorched, a little bit wrinkly. It's not going to be the same as if they're deep fried, but it's going to be much healthier and still really tasty. All right, our next step, as I said, was going to be to add the stock to help get the goodies off the bottom of the pan. Once we get those all off, we're going to add in our sauce. Pan is good and hot. Here's the rest of our sauce that we made up. And I'm also going to add in on top those tops of the scallions. And this is a nice side for more vegetables to add to the chicken and vegetable stir fry that we just did.